Sorry, I just want to record it. I haven't done this for ages, so I was just pressing the buttons and I didn't know what I was doing. So hopefully there are some of you out there, and I got 7 o'clock almost exactly on the dot. So I'm going to sort of double screen so that hopefully I can, just being interrupted, hopefully I can see you guys as well. Hang on, I also need to turn the volume down on this, otherwise you get to hear me twice. So yeah, so hopefully that's all working. In fact, it is all working because I'm double screening and I've checked I'm there. Yeah, I wanted to come on and chat about this idea of self-care, particularly when we are with our children all the time. So as home educating parents, like 24/7. And it's something that I found particularly with unschooling parents. So for parents that maybe weren't, you know, when their children are young, weren't taking them to classes, or their children weren't ready to be separated from them. And as unschooling parents, we were probably honouring that, going with our children, being with our children, not going to groups that didn't suit them, being with them at home all the time. You know, wherever we were, our children are right there with us. And if you also then extend that into children not having a 7 o'clock bedtime, and your evenings were also taken up by small people, or at least having small people present, it's a lot, isn't it? Actually, it's a lot to have young people who need us and need us to help them do things. So whether that's something, you know, maybe they've got a project going on, or they want to paint at 9 o'clock in the evening, or whether it's just they need help getting a snack or filling up a drink. It's a lot on our, not just our time, but like our mental, our emotional, our physical capabilities. It has an impact on us as adults, as the parents, as the carers. So for your pleasure this evening, I have put on my, I don't know if it go over my headphones. This is my new, and it is new, I only bought it last week. I don't know what they're called. They're like, it's like a really oversized jumper. Udi? Are they called Udis? I think that's like a brand name. But I saw, I went shopping with my daughter, and we went into this particular shop, actually not to buy anything, but to go to the cafe, take a break and go to the cafe. And I saw this hanging up, and I thought, I've been looking at them for ages and thought, like online or seen other people with them, and thought that's my type of thing, right? And I saw it and I thought, that's it, I'm buying it. And it is what I tend to wear in the evenings now. And before I owned this, I would be in pajamas at like 7 o'clock, sometimes earlier. So instead of, in the name of self-care, instead of turning up tonight, not in pajamas, but in something maybe considered a bit more respectful, I guess, I thought, no, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna wear this. I'm gonna be cozy. I'm gonna be comfortable. You know, let's model that little bit of self-care that I'm talking about. Yeah, so my big question is really, what stops us? Because there is a time when I would have walked into a shop and seen something like this that I really wanted, and I wouldn't have bought it. I wouldn't have bought it for myself. I wouldn't have asked for it from anybody. I would have probably looked at it longingly, like I knew, or I would have known, that's like, I like that. But I wouldn't have actually bought it for myself. And there are other things traditionally that I wouldn't have done that I now do. But certainly when my children were smaller, and it really boils down to this: I wouldn't have asked for help, and I wouldn't have asked for anything for me, nothing. Even though I maybe knew what I needed, like I needed help with the children maybe, or maybe I needed to feel more comfortable. I really wanted to put my pajamas on, but I thought it was inappropriate, so I didn't. And there was a time when I wouldn't have asked myself for permission to do that, and I wouldn't have asked anybody else for help either. And I wanted to maybe just chat through why don't we do that, even when we know we are drowning under the effort of small children 24/7. It's always us. They're always attached to us. You know, if you co-sleep as well, they're sleeping on top of you. You know, you wake up in the morning and, you know, there's a child like crawling across your bed or calling you from another room. And the same in the evening as well, because maybe you don't have that sort of, this is bedtime, and you go to bed and you shut the door, and then I'm having like an evening, even if that's only an hour or something. That's just not part of your lifestyle. It certainly wasn't part of our lifestyle. You know, children were there from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, because I went to bed with them, and then they would be on top of me all night. So you know, what is it that stops us? I'm asking you. Maybe you can pop it in the comments if you know the answer. What is it that stops people from looking at this webinar, for example, that Naomi and I have got coming up? What is it that stops people from signing up and saying, I am important enough that I need to find out how to make this work? Like, traditional self-care methods might not be on the agenda. Like, maybe you can't go away for a weekend, or you know, leave your children for an hour every day, like a schedule. This is what I do every single day. I leave my children. Maybe those things aren't things that you can do, but what stops us from even taking care of our own needs, recognizing our needs, or even when we do, what stops us from asking somebody else for help, or what stops us from helping ourselves? I have a few ideas, but if you have some ideas, you can pop them in the chat. You know, and what stops us? So helping ourselves is like, what stops us from signing up for a webinar, or what stops us from you know, buying maybe a book, or what stops us from trying things out? Yeah, so like I said, I have a few ideas. I had this, my gran was awesome, and she was always busy, and she, even into her 80s, was making meals for like elderly lunch club, that sort of thing. And even when the people in the lunch club were, you know, 20 years younger than her, she was doing that. And she was always, I remember I mean, food was like a big thing. So she was always at home making marmalade, or she was always knitting something for somebody. She was always doing something, and she was quite impressive in what she managed to do in terms of her age as well. And she kept going, and she kept doing. And when she like when we would all eat together, she would she'd barely sit down and eat. She was the last one to sit down. She'd serve everybody, she'd be the last one to sit down. I don't actually, I'm trying to think if I have an image of her eating. I'm sure she did, but I don't specifically remember that, because she was always the first one up to clear the table as well. And I was thinking about this as I was chatting, me and Naomi were chatting last night, And I was thinking about this in terms of this picture of like women having to be busy, and also women having to sort of be the ones in charge of the home. So that idea behind taking care of the children, taking care of the house, taking care of the food, taking care of the laundry. And now we throw into the mix, you know, lots of us do like paid work as well. So we go to work as well. And this being like the epitome of what we should be aiming for. And the reality is that that's really hard. And it's really hard when your children don't go to school for 6 hours a day. And it's really hard when you don't have a community around you who are sharing that responsibility, so that there is more connection as you do certain things. So in terms of like, you might be doing a physical task, but you are receiving an emotional support around that, and maybe also doing that task together. So yeah, so there's lots wrapped up in there in terms of, I was unpicking in terms of what was expected of me, like what was my role model. Like she was a role model in my family about what women should do, and how that was perceived. That was like the epitome. That was like, and if I didn't do those things, that I was lacking somehow. You know, there was sort of shame attached to it. And you know, this not asking for help, because that might show that I was failing somehow, or not coping, and really beginning to overcome those things in lots of different ways, which is what Naomi and me are going to partly talk about, and how we can meet our needs, how we can know what our needs are, actually what they are, not listen to someone else tell us what they are, and how we can put those into place. Excuse me. How we can put those into place, because it makes such a difference when we do. You know, when you are feeling, so if I'm physically comfortable, warm, snug, cozy, and that is something that I love. So if I fulfill that need, I can fulfill that need even though my children are around me all the time. I can make sure, or do my best to ensure, that I am wearing clothes that feel comfortable for me, and in that way I am meeting a need. There's lots of other things that we can do as well. Something that unschooling teaches lots of us, so like the adults, when we're going through the process of unschooling our children, you know, we learn maybe things about our children, but we also learn things about ourselves. You know, we talk about doing more of the things we love, and start to think about, well, am I spending time doing what I want to be doing, or am I putting those things aside because they're seen as less important than the job of cleaning the house, or less important than, I don't know, whatever it is, instead of spending time doing something that we love, which actually in turn makes us happy and makes us feel good about ourselves. And if we can overcome that, maybe that feeling of guilt, I'm not cleaning, I haven't cleaned the house today or this afternoon, I've actually spent an hour painting or reading or gardening or whatever it is that you've spent your time on that maybe previously thought that was frivolous or a luxury or something to do at the end of doing your list of jobs. That's quite a common one. But to spend our time doing things that actually we love is a way of nurturing ourselves, and that's another way of caring for ourselves. Anyway, so it was really just to open up this question about what stops us from caring for ourselves, what stops us from asking for help, and really encouraging you, obviously, to come along to the webinar on Sunday, this Sunday coming, so the 22nd, at 7:30. I think I put a link on the live for that. The Live, Play, Learn monthly members get a self-care session every month as part of the membership, because that's how important I think it is. When I first started Live, Play, Learn, within 6 months, this was the idea of self-care was something that came up again and again and again. And we had a whole month based on self-care and what that looks like in home educating families, particularly unschooling families. So how can I take care of myself whilst I've also have my children around? At the time, I was particularly thinking about young children, but obviously that includes older ones as well, teens as well. I have a it's called Self-Care and Connection booklet. I might see if I can pop that in a link as well, which I think is about £5, which talks to different ways we can care for ourselves. Plus, there is a massive list. I think there's over 100 ideas in there about games and activities that you can either play with your children or you can set up for your children in times when you need to rest, take it slightly easier. Anything from just having half an hour to sit down to a whole day or multiple days if you're unwell, for example. Activities and games and ideas in there that you can do with your children when you need to take a moment. So it's called Self-Care and Connection. So the idea is that you can do both. So that's available as well. So that's 3 things. I'm going to tell you more about the self-care in the monthly membership. So it's an hour every month, and I co-host that with a lovely lady, my very good friend. She's called Victoria Casey. She sings. That's where her heart is at. That is how she nourishes herself, and she shares the seashells. She doesn't share seashells. It's getting a bit tongue twistering. She shares songs with us every month. They are they're like mantras. They're songs with very few words, and she sings us through those, and the idea that you can take those away with you. She has a lot of information on the benefits of singing as well, which is awesome. So she's there. We also do a check-in with each other and just hold space for wherever you're at that month. We usually do like a little journaling exercise. There's like a little bit of space and time for a doodle or some words around a theme. Sometimes we do a really simple meditation. yeah, it's a really gentle self-care hour, and it's unschooling focus, so specifically for parents who are unschooling their children. So with that in mind, it's sort of a really good space for maybe sharing some of the things that are going on in your family in a space that is knowledgeable about the unschooling lifestyle. Yeah, so that's every month. And it's also a space you can turn up just as you are. Like if you don't want to talk, that's fine. If you don't want to sing, no one knows anyway, because everybody sings on mute because it's really hard to sing over Zoom together. You can just listen to Victoria, who has a beautiful voice, and let that wash over you. And of course, if you don't want to journal, you don't have to do that either, because no one's checking up on you afterwards. Sometimes it's just nice to be in a gentle space with others. But as I said, that's part of the membership, but it's really close to my heart in terms of caring for the carers, because that's what we are. Parents are carers for our children. So if you can't make that, there's the booklet, Self-Care and Connection. I'll try and pop a link in, and the webinar on Sunday, where you would be most welcome to join us. And we're going to think through some practical things that will suit you and your needs, that you can put in place to help support you, which in turn will mean you are in a better position to help support your children. But that's it for me, I think, this evening. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you soon.